Well, it's certainly been an eventful couple of hours? Probably not even like a full 18 hours at this point. For many of us, we may have woken up to news of President Nelson's passing. We are also talking about the events that are happening in Michigan today. Honestly, again, if you are very much aware of the video that I uploaded this week talking about Charlie Kirk and the connections to the Book of Mormon, the connections and the parallels just keep happening, all leading up to, I'm hoping, the second coming of Jesus Christ. Anything, but there's a lot of new developments. They released the name. Just talking about the Michigan shooting, real quick. They released the name of the individual who committed this heinous act. Released the name of. Let me see if I can actually find it here. What name is Thomas Jacob Sanford, according to Grand Blanc Township Police Chief William Renia, a former Marine from the looks of things, of what they're reporting on him. And so our prayers are with the victims of this, and honestly, again, this is just an impromptu live. There's not really a lot of thought that's gone into it right now. Go ahead and leave comments, super chats, whatever, wanting to get your thoughts out there right now. But yeah, there's a lot to talk about here. All-star panel here. We have Michael Zatar, Timothy Berman, the LDS Cowboy apologist. How you doing, gentlemen?
All right. It's been an eventful day.
All things considered, I would imagine.
All things considered, yes.
Goodness me. But before we started, Michael, you were mentioning something about a potential motive. Now, there hasn't been a motive released yet.
Right.
But you mentioned something that is if this is maybe connected to something that the church is signed on as a co-plaintiff on. Why don't you go ahead and explain that for a bit?
Yeah, so the church joined a number of other churches in a suit that's being put before the Supreme Court to try and uphold certain kinds of laws and prevent other laws which relate to, I'm going to air quote this, transgender rights, because these aren't rights. And that's the church's position. These things aren't rights. And what we're talking about is having trans participation in youth sports and other types of gendered things, events, what have you, but also more to the point that they don't have access into intimate spaces of the opposite biological sex. The church's position in this brief is that the term gender and biological sex, they mean the same thing, and that's the church's definition of these things. So that information got leaked out yesterday. Now, Thomas Sanford is the second name that got leaked. The first name was wrong. Thomas Sanford is the correct name. The first name that was leaked, for anybody that might have heard a different name, was incorrect. It was Marcus Hale. That's not the person. Apparently, though, people thought it was. They went and they found a whole bunch of anti-Mormon rhetoric posted by this Marcus Hale person. So for a while there, it was like, oh, well, anti-Mormon, what's the rhetoric, whatever. This Sanford guy, he is the guy. He's been confirmed by the police chief as the guy. We don't have a motive from them yet. I just found the timing interesting. Because that news was pretty big yesterday. As some people may know, I don't like monitor. I'm not like watching, but I see a lot of LDS groups, anti-LDS groups, chatter, political chatter on social media. And there were a lot of threats. There was a lot of really awful takes against the church yesterday, even in places where it's just like the Latter-day Gay stories. If you guys know that page.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
And some of these other ones, people were really angry. They were not being peaceful. They were not being peacemakers. That's for sure. Just some awful stuff, and that's in public, and that's not even. I don't really look at X a lot. I don't know what happened or happens on X. I don't.
Probably a good thing.
Yeah. I could talk. I could say that I was listening to someone saying, well, X seems to be a space for a lot of psychopaths. I was like, ooh, maybe that's why I don't like it. But I see Facebook, Instagram, that kind of stuff. And it was, there was just an outpouring of a lot of negativity. So if this Sanford guy is an anti-Mormon, if this Sanford guy is trying to be an ally of a rather extreme nature, like a political extremist, it would make sense that could have been part of a motive or the motive that tipped him over the edge. I don't know yet, but I find the timing interesting. Either way, Satan, in some form or way, motivated someone to shoot 10 people in an LDS congregation that we know of. There's possibly more once they can get through the wreckage of the fire. 2 of them were children, and 2 of them are dead.
Yeah.
And it took an armed off-duty police officer who was in the bishopric to stop it.
It should be noted, though, that we don't know whether or not the 2 that were dead are children themselves. We don't know that yet.
No, yeah, we don't. I don't think they are. It was that 2 children got shot. Yeah. Is they're
right.
Yeah. And so that's where we stand right now. We don't know if more may end up passing from injury. And I saw a police statement that said that they expect to find more victims in the wreckage. So, if you think about it like it's a game of chess on the world between Heavenly Father and Satan, or Jesus Christ and Satan, or however you want to think about it, and I've heard that be talked about from apostles in certain ways. Such as like when we build a temple, it's like we're checkmating Satan's power, things like that. You think about we make a move and Satan makes a counter move. Whatever motivated his heart was clearly satanic and purely satanic. And if you think about how there's also, I'm going to strike against the whole like not the open theism position a little bit. And say, think about how there's no coincidences, and that is something that is literally in the Temple President's Handbook, that there are no coincidences in the performance of this work. But that means in the temple. But if you think about it on a grander scale, if you expand it out, and there are no coincidences in some of these things, there's a reason why Satan got someone to do this. And so, yeah, I get it. Keep the 72-hour rule. I'm just saying, guys, we did something, and something acted against us almost right away.
Well, I mean, we kind of saw something very similar happen with the Charlie Kirk shooting a couple weeks ago. right? It was the same type of thing.
Mhm.
But there's a reason why I made the video that I did, because it's something that will not leave my mind. I honestly think, given the events of today and things like that. Now, fortunately, with President Nelson, he wasn't taken out by an assassin, fortunately. Um,
Yeah.
but this is something that's been kind of making the rounds on Twitter. It's something that, like, I was watching Ward Radio's coverage. They're still going for whatever reason on this. But
Mhm.
one of the things that was brought up was that, like, for roughly about almost 25 years, from 1995 to 2018, we had a businessman and a marketing executive heading up the church. All right. And that's one of the things that helped, expand the church into more homes, the I'm a Mormon campaign, a lot of all this different stuff, especially when it came to the Salt Lake Olympics. And then, who did we have leading the church during the last 7 years now? A heart surgeon, a medical professional during a global pandemic. Say what you will about the effectiveness of some of those things, but there was a bit of legitimacy there when you actually had someone who
Mhm.
was a medical professional as a prophet of God. Now we have a constitutional law judge, a constitutional judge. What does that mean? What are we coming up against here? Like, and I don't think and that was one of the reasons why I asked you the question first, Michael, is that, if this guy, and again, we have another comment here just to kind of at least kind of throwing out another bit of motive, had beef with the bishop. We don't know that for sure. But
You would think he'd target the
you would
bishop and
think,
not the entire congregation to burn them alive. But yeah.
but there are a lot of people who are just so unhinged at this entire thing that they don't quite recognize, they don't differentiate local members with the prophet of the or anything like that, even though we do follow them, or at least we should.
Well, it's that and the othering that happens in people's minds. As soon as you're the other, and I could dehumanize you because of my
Right.
politics, everything just is all of a sudden back on the table in terms of what action is
Yeah.
appropriate.
So honestly, we still don't know a motive. Right now, we know that authorities are looking into it and bringing that up. We just don't know, and that's honestly kind of the problem. But there's a lot of speculation thrown out that, like, huge anti-Mormon. But I think we're probably going to be seeing a lot more, at the very least, legal battles, if not more violent rhetoric coming from those that essentially want to see us burn. Keep in mind, we have had so many different issues just within, like, the last 10 years alone, especially after Prop 8, where, like, especially, like, I don't spend a lot of time on Ex-Mormon Reddit, but this is one of the things that keeps getting brought up, is burn it the F down. And they had to add with truth at the end in order to obfuscate the fact that they're trying to obfuscate the fact that, no, we're not calling for violence. We're actually calling for violence on you guys. Like, come on.
Well, so Robert Boylan shared this, and so did many others after him. A guy said on the 22nd of July this year, I would blow up every Mormon temple if I could.
Oh,
Mormonism is false.
yeah.
It leads people into error.
Like,
Right.
I mean, that kind of rhetoric just happens. That was just a random
Yeah.
X comment.
like the bigotry is astounding, and the excuses for the bigotry is just as astounding.
So I have something on X. I want to share this because
Let's bring it up.
was made aware of. Hang on, I'm trying to get that over there.
Oh, I should disclaimer. The way I said that might be weird. Robert Boylan did not. He's not
Is
the
that
one that
being
said
shared?
the comment. He shared the comment as a, hey, this is anti-Mormon rhetoric we see. And he did that after the events.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Oh.
The way I said that might be weird. Robert Boylan did not. He's not
Is
the
that
one that
being
said
shared?
the comment. He shared the comment as a, hey, this You are, but we can
We've
hear
we've got some
and he
some echo going
did that
back on
after
your thing.
the events.
Yeah. Here we go.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay.
So I'm on X a lot, and so I've been monitoring X, and this just showed up. Facts we know about the Michigan church attacker. What is interesting is multiple IEDs. That's what's concerning. So they're saying that this was something that was premeditated and being a veteran, he probably this is planned out. This was a planned attack. Because he drove his vehicle into the church, stepped out and shot into the foyer. Police, I guess, arrived on the scene, and he basically was unalived during the shootout with the police. But they found
No, he was unalived. He was unalived by someone in the congregation.
Well, based on the reports that I saw from CNN, it was a shootout, and it was the police that took him out. There hasn't been any confirmation as to whether or not that was someone from the congregation.
Oh,
yeah,
that's everything I've seen. Okay, go on.
First, it was reported that it was just an IED on the truck, but I guess they have found multiple IEDs on the church property.
Oh my gosh!
So this was a planned attack. So they're saying the investigators are focusing on possible personal grievances, mental health history, and radicalization as motives. I probably would not be surprised if there was some form of complex post-traumatic distress disorder syndrome or disorder going on, some PTSD dealing with. I mean, it looks like FBI are involved with it. They're looking at all things. So this was a planned attack on that church.
Well, and there's a lot of people, again, this is mostly speculative,
right?
All right, but if you scroll down, there's actually a few comments here that are actually kind of worth noting here about this, about some of the things that he donated to and that he supported. And this guy,
on the thing, can you
scroll down if you can. We're looking at the comments from Deep Grid. This is on the actual post itself, so I don't know. Oh no, so it looks like you're. Let me share my screen. Actually, let me see if I can get this going because I'm looking at the same exact post. So let me share my screen. Here we go. Okay, so we're looking at my screen right now. So this is the same exact post here. So just kind of going down, you notice here like all these different organizations, and it's unfortunate that we're kind of diving into politics, especially on Sunday. But I don't think and to to your point, effervescent relief, it may have been an issue with local leadership or the church as a whole. It's likely more the church on the whole, especially given these organizations that he seems to be supporting, like Act Blue, Blue Origin, a lot of leftist leaning super PACs that are just ultimately, let's face it, anti-religion and especially anti-Mormon. And so that I think is where we're having a this is where I think a lot of the connections are ultimately being made, is that especially with the church being so heavily involved. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of things that are ultimately moral standpoints that the church should have, and yes, they are left-leaning organizations. They absolutely are left-leaning. I would not be surprised if we're going to see more of this. And we are probably going to see the ex-Mormons and the anti-Mormons that have wanted us to burn as a result, cheering this. I would not be surprised. I haven't seen it yet, and I don't want to make a definitive statement on that. I don't know if it's going to be shown otherwise.
Yeah, so there's also one because I think what a lot of people don't realize is that there's a huge issue going on with Michigan right now, um, which Ilhan Omar. There's a lot of controversy swirling about her, and it is a predominantly Muslim populated area in there where they're actually doing calls to prayer at 5 a.m. The whole city council is Muslim. The mayor is Muslim. They're trying to get a Muslim Brotherhood affiliate into Congress. And one, if you scroll down to mom of our four, uh, is suggesting, and again, this is speculation. This is not fact. This is speculation, mind you, that there are people saying that this maybe ties to how Islamic terrorists operate in relationship to that, the use of a vehicle, use of a firearm, suspiciously decorated with American flags, planted IEDs. And so there's some questions coming out about that.
Yeah, there are several IEDs. All of this, and
Yeah.
and this is unsettling. From what Mosiah is saying here in the comments, already seen a
Yes.
few Exmos cheering this. That is unsettling.
I'm seeing, I mean, I haven't seen cheering of that. I've seen a lot of, I mean, yesterday, like I said, I saw a lot of anger and hate being spat at the church about that briefing, right? So I could be doing an incorrect 2+2 here. However, there's something to the coincidence thing. I don't care what anybody says. We make a move, Satan makes a move. That's always the way it's going to be. And back on President Nelson a little bit, I've seen a lot of people be very afraid of President Oaks, talking about how they're afraid of what his presidency is going to mean, or is I said that weird. They're afraid of what his presidency is going to mean for specifically LGBT in identifying individuals in the church, or LGBTQ plus, or however you want to say it. And so, and these are members of the church who are fearful of those things. And so I'm finding that there's a lot of people who are legitimately having their politics lead the way that they live their religion. They think their politics are the gospel, and they just make it convenient to input the gospel where they think they can, or to use what parts of it while discarding others. Just to say it, there is no perfect political party. There's no perfect politician. There's no perfect human being. There's no perfect political system that exists on the earth today until or unless we actually get Zion established.
Right.
And that will have Christ at its head. And whether you not you like it, it's a type of a theocracy. It's a type of a theo republic democracy. I don't know, but no one's going to be perfect. And just the kind of intense way that people live their politics over the gospel, it's like if you have to say violence is wrong, but, or it was wrong to murder Charlie Kirk, but it was wrong to murder these people in this LDS congregation, but
Yeah,
you got a problem.
we have a couple of special guests who have arrived.
How you doing? Never, right?
Can you guys hear us?
Yes, we can.
Yep.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure because I'm using a microphone that I don't normally use. It's like a travel one. So this is our friend Jared from Christian Homestead.
Hi.
We're having
Hello,
dinner
Jared.
together tonight with families. So we thought we would jump on and say hi to you guys. And I'm not sure what all you guys talked about before, so you might have to recap us really quick. I just had to set this all up.
Yeah, we were mostly talking about some of the implications of what happened in Michigan today.
Okay.
A lot of the things that happened there, the tragedy there, but also a lot of the reaction that that has happened. One of the things that that I honestly feel, and Jessica, I know that you saw it. Jared, I don't know if you saw my video this week, about the parallels of the Book of Mormon that we're seeing with today that led up to Christ's birth and his coming to the Nephites.
Do you want to bullet point it for him?
Yeah. So just basically a lot of the bullet points of it is that with what we're seeing of the the murder of religious and political leaders were what eventually led up to a divine turning point for the Nephites. And if the Book of Mormon is truly written for our day, we are meant to see that poetry rhyming, just as we see that same type of timeline with the Jaredites and Ether. We see that same type of timeline happening with the Nephites. We're seeing that same timeline happening with us now in the modern era, in the last dispensation. And so, just like with what Elder Bednar said last year conference, he pointing out that the Book of Mormon truly was written for us. It wasn't written for the Nephites. It wasn't written for anyone else but for us.
Mhm.
And that the Lord inspired Mormon and Moroni to include the things that they did. We need to be paying attention.
Yeah.
And so I think that's that same type of thing that happened here. I mean,
So Monty
fortunately,
does apologetics, by the way. And he's trying to tell us all that we need to repent.
not with the same type of authority as a prophet, mind you. Like, I will never claim that.
He's just quoting.
Yes, but that's the thing, is that's the entire point. And so if we were to use the Book of Mormon as that blueprint, we can see those events line up. And I'm going to show my nerd here. If you remember with George Lucas, what he said about the prequel trilogy in relation to the sequel to the original trilogy, he said it's like poetry, it rhymes. And it's that same type of thing that we're seeing with the Book of Mormon and with our day leading up to the second coming of Jesus Christ.
It's a type and shadow thing. I have a diagram that shows like the prophet down at the bottom looking up at a mountain range with like a telescope. And it's like there's the little mountain, the little ones in between, the medium-sized mountain, a little one in between, and then the big mountain. And the point of the big mountain is like the second coming. Mm-hmm. And like the little mountain is like all the types being established, like all those types in scriptures that are like the first occurrence of something happening. And then the middle is everything that happened again in the meridian of time with Jesus Christ, and it sets the pattern for the type. Mm-hmm. And then after that you see like the little shadows, and you're going to see the pattern and the shadows repeat all the way up to the point of the top of the last mountain, which is where everything kind of, it's the idea that all things are gathered in one in Christ. And I feel like the Book of Mormon is cool because it is for our day. And it like totally tells you like what to expect. I think in this time that like precedes the second coming of the Lord, it's like, what are all the, I don't know, what do you call it? Like the horrible things that are going to happen.
Judgments.
The judgments.
Calamities.
The curses. The covenant curses, right?
Yeah. Tribulations.
Yeah. And so I feel like we are starting to see that. And I don't know, how did you feel when like you saw that news about, because it was like about President Nelson posted the peace message and his like Time magazine article came out on the 5th, right? Mm-hmm. And then it was his birthday on the 9th. And then on the 10th, it was that assassination of Charlie Kirk, which seemed to kind of get everybody riled up again.
At a really key time, because you have the President Nelson piece where his 101st birthday was the day before, and then the day after Charlie Kirk was September 11th. So that was a strange coinciding of events.
Yeah.
When I was doing a video about that, someone had mentioned these parallels with the Book of Mormon, and I occasionally visit that topic. And so I decided to do a new video and just kind of like examine it again. And I was looking at, I think it was chapters 7 and 8, maybe 6, 7, and 8 of 3rd Nephi. Mm-hmm. And that's where, it was talking about political assassinations and people divide up into tribes. And I feel like, what happened with Charlie Kirk,
we're seeing that happen now, though, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of people
were seeing it before.
Mm-hmm.
It's been around for a while, but like this was a thing that exacerbated it even more. You have these like really hot periods where there's a event and it really polarizes people. But then after that, it's really interesting because one thing I never noticed is before the destruction that comes to the Nephites, before like the great storm and all this stuff, one of the main things that they point out is right before that happened, the last big thing was like there was like a spike in baptisms. And I guess I always just like skim past that part whenever I read it, but it's
Yeah.
interesting because this year there's been all these church news stories that have highlighted like large baptismal events in places like, I think one of them was Papua New Guinea and another one was, I don't know if it was Sierra Leone, but it was like a West African nation. And then on top of that, we've had the largest number of convert baptisms in church history over this 12-month period. And so is that where we're at right now? Like the last thing before the Great Destruction? I don't know, but that's something that...
Well, and there's some more, Jared, because we announced a temple for the DR Congo. And just the other day, 1,800 Christians were murdered in Congo.
Really?
Wow.
Just the other day?
Yeah, just the other day.
Wow.
Overall, across Africa, because of Boko Haram violence, there's been 100,000 Christians killed in like 10 years. Numerous churches get burned, thousands of them.
And then what about
there's a guy.
Like, how's the church doing over there? Do we know?
Well, we're building a temple in Congo, so and then
We have been doing relatively well.
Yeah, we've been doing fine in those terms. I don't know how safe everybody feels. There's a gentleman, a brother in my ward. Our ward split, so I almost said last ward, but like kind of last ward. And he's from Congo, and he wasn't a member of the church when he was living there, but they were Christian. And Boko Haram came into his village, and they had to flee, and he got separated from his family for a few years before they got reunited here in the U.S. His conversion story is that he got to the U.S. via France through an NGO, and he was walking out of the Washington, D.C. airport along the freeway, and elderly LDS couple stopped to pick him up, and that was the beginning of it all. They helped him reunite with his family and everything, and they're great family. But yeah, they're Congolese refugees from Islamic violence against Christians. And so we see it's not just our church, right? It is more generally globally against Christianity, and we just don't see it reported in the news.
Do you think that what do you think the reason is though? Like, do you think there's a reason why it doesn't get reported in the news?
Bill Maher talked about this. I don't know when, but I saw a clip of him talking about it, and I'm not like a Bill Maher stan, but I thought it was interesting. He posited that the reason the Christian stuff isn't talked about is because it's not involving Jews. Like if it's Jews, oh great, big story, Gaza, whatever. He's like, there's more violence happening against Christians in Africa than against Gazans in the Gaza Strip. So I don't know. That was the first thing
Okay, good.
So I have this book. I've been contemplating doing a series on it. My grandparents gifted me this book, but I lost my copy that they gifted me. But I found this at Deseret Industries some years ago, and I picked it up. And I've been kind of going back and reading through it. But it's interesting because here's a snippet that I have out of it where it says, as we should be aware, this is called Turmoil in the Last Days. As we should be aware, we are living during the time period referred to scripturally as the last days, significantly in the Doctrine and Covenants. The Lord often refers to them as these last days. So far as we can learn, that means the last days of wickedness before the ushering in of the millennium and the earth's renewal to its paradisical state. Further, these last days comprise the dispensation of the fullness of times. These are the days when the Lord will hasten his work in its time. Doctrine and Covenants 8873. Hang on.
Uh-oh.
I don't know why my daughter seems to think this
that's an interesting
perfect time to
I think
call me.
Did you guys see that? Did you see the one that Ahmad Corbett did at the fair conference? Did you guys see that? Have you watched that yet? I know you did.
Snippets of it, not the full thing yet, though.
Okay, well,
I need to watch it still.
You need to watch it. Go watch it because it was like a killer talk, and I really hope that he'll do it again, like over the pulpit at General Conference, because he basically said that even in the church, we're going to experience this like falling away. And he talked about how one, this is like a sign of like the fullness of the Gentiles, like both the righteousness and the wickedness come to a fullness, right? There's like the two things happening parallel. It's like the wickedness rises and the righteousness does too, and it's like equal and opposite. And I think it was Neil L. Anderson had talked about how there's like these opposing forces, but they always kind of like equal out, right? Like as wickedness rises, righteousness does too. And it's kind of like the theme in Isaiah, like the whole book in Isaiah, or like the book of Revelation. There's like these two choices, these two paths. And I feel like he really touched on this. And he was talking about how it's because of our wickedness, because of the wickedness of like us Western Gentile Christian nations, that those curses come. And I cannot help but see that like right now, like just waking up this morning, like last night, I felt sad, like hearing about President Nelson. I'm going to start crying. Oh my gosh, stop. Because I loved President Nelson. And I had like experiences just in talking with him. He's just such a great man. And it was just sad to see him pass away. And like, we all knew this day was coming, but I didn't really expect it to be like last night. And I felt like really emotional. And then I wake up in the morning and then there's like this terrible news that's like in contrast to this great news about the prophet. And I feel like the same thing happened a week or two ago with the whole Charlie Kirk thing, because it was like President Nelson puts this message out about peace. And then like 5 days later, it's like everything but peace. And then he passes away. And then, of course, Charlie Kirk dominates the headlines instead of President Nelson's Time magazine article. But then this tonight, like last night, it's like you have this news about the prophet. His life is being aired on television. But what are people glued to right now? The bad thing that happened. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's like this wickedness and this righteousness. There's like a positive message from the Lord that he wants us to hear. And then there's what Satan wants us to hear. And they're happening simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
I think the adversary knows that his time is short, and prophets can see around corners, and so they tell us what we need to know at the right time. There's been an alarming rate of religious violence against Christians and Jews, mostly from what I can tell. When it comes to Africa, yeah, I just wonder if Africa historically doesn't really get much news coverage for anything, because I think the way that people perceive it, it's like I don't know. I just wonder if like that was going on in like Europe, or if it was going on in some other place, like everybody would be losing their minds.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm not saying like, I'm not trying to be controversial, but I just wonder if that's the case. But that obviously doesn't take away from the seriousness.
Don't worry, Latter-day Lion likes controversy. I don't know.
I thrive on it.
He's a walking controversy. He's a walking controversy.
You could totally say it on here.
Yeah, it's fine.
So I don't know, but it doesn't take away from what's happening for sure. And it's just the fuller signs of the times. There's been this spike, especially this year, in religious violence.
Do you guys think that, like, because you mentioned how prophets see around corners, right? And do you get the feeling that maybe President Nelson like knew that the violence was going to increase, or that like persecution would increase, and that like maybe that's why he delivered that message? Because I was kind of thinking about it last night. And then you've talked about this on your channel about how, so Jared his whole channel is like Second Coming stuff, for those of you who don't know. And so if this is like a topic that you love, that's like his main niche. And he had done more than one video on how they were called as apostles, how President Nelson was called one day, and then the next day Dallin H. Oaks was called. Do you want to recap that?
Oh, with the
day apart, and was it Kimball?
Okay, so this is how it went. I can't remember who they replaced. I think it was LeGrand Richards and Marky Peterson.
Yeah.
I can't remember which one died first, but let's say it was LeGrand Richards. He died on January 11th of 1983. At that time, President Kimball was very ill, to where he couldn't really do anything. A general conference goes by, and there isn't a new apostle appointed. And then October comes around, and then still no new apostle. You get to January 11th of 1984, and now Marky Peterson passes away. And so now you have two vacancies, and you have a sick prophet that can't fill those vacancies. Well, during a moment of lucidity, he was able to call for President Hinckley, who was like a second counselor at the time or something,
I love President
and told President Hinckley, call Nelson and Oakes in that order. And so they both started at the same time, and it was just really interesting. Also, and sorry, I don't mean to go too far off into like Second Coming or weird
No,
signs.
Do it.
But
This is your thing.
it was in between. It was in between the death of those two apostles that you had this unusual flooding in downtown Salt Lake City, like right up to Temple Square. Basically, they had to like get all these sandbags and all these men to like divert the flow of water down State Street. And when we think about the Second Coming, we think about how it's similar to the days of Noah. There's going to be a baptism of fire this time rather than baptism of water. But there's just like weird stuff. So I feel like there's something special going on with President Nelson and President Oakes. A lot of other people already feel that and realize that. One of the popular things is President Nelson was the heart surgeon working on the heart of the church.
During a pandemic.
Working on making us of one heart and one mind. And now he's passed away, and now President Oakes was the judge. He was on the Utah Supreme Court.
And they just filed an amicus brief. I started making a video on this last night, and then I paused it because of President Nelson passing away. Like, I was up at midnight also last night trying to do this video, because that's like when I get my best work done, okay? And like I was like doing that, and I have it like finished, but I'm gonna wait. I'll post it maybe like Monday. I just felt like it needed to wait a minute. And but it's basically just talking about the current amicus briefs that the church has signed on to, which is just a repeat of what they've been doing. It's basically the family proclamation, religious freedom. These are at the forefront of everything that the church ever gets involved in when it comes to anything political. They filed a huge amicus brief on 2 cases that are going before the Supreme Court. They're similar to the one last year. The one last year was basically where it was schools teaching like basically LGBT and like transgenderism as part of like the actual curriculum. And they signed on to an amicus brief in that case. And then this time around, it has more to do with like 2 issues. I have notes on this, but
Michael touched on this earlier too, but if you have more, then bring it on.
Well, I might not, because I didn't hear what Michael said. But the point is this is a very good time to have a judge in charge of the church, or at least running it for a time, right? And so that was my point about what he had talked about on his channel about the way that they were called, the fact that it was clearly a miracle that President Kimball became lucid long enough to be able to give this instruction to President Hinckley, well, then Elder Hinckley, or I see he was in the presidency, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was president. He was a counselor in the first presidency.
Yeah, and so he was kind of running the show back then for Kimball, and so he had gotten lucid long enough just to be able to give this instruction. And there's like an article about this in like LDS Living and Church News and like church magazines, so you guys can look this up. But it's a beautiful story. And
let me just point out really quick, in President Nelson's, which talk was it? I think it was his April 2024 talk. He specifically pointed that out in the footnotes, the whole thing about the 2 apostles dying on January 11th. So,
and I think he was trying to drop a hint to us about who's actually running the church, which is Jesus Christ. He's the head of the church. We all have our diagram of Jesus at the head, and then the first presidency, and then the quorum of the 12, and then all the auxiliaries and 70. And we all see that structure, but I think he was specifically calling it out. He's also the one who read us the Restoration Proclamation, which it seems like is really, I guess, to the point of this whole video that you're doing, Monty, is just, it's a Book of Mormon parallel. Yes. It's like, that is what Nephi was doing on the tower, right? He's like, you guys need to repent, and you need to do it now.
It seems like, I don't know, the more that I study the Book of Mormon, the more that I see all these different parallels. I mean, it's easy to kind of see like where all these, I used Pahoran II as the primary thing when it came to Charlie Kirk, but I don't think that was really the correct parallel. I honestly think right now, the more that I study it, and especially as we get closer to the Second Coming and the way that those parallels are lining up in the Book of Mormon, we're likely somewhere in between, somewhere within 3rd Nephi 3 and 3rd Nephi 6. That's
Yeah.
where I think we're at right
I
now.
would agree with that. And I think we're in
Right.
those early third Nephi chapters too. I see the most parallels there. Like I remember, I think it was David A. Bednar a couple of years ago mentioned the Helaman chapters,
Mm-hmm.
and he talked about the restoration. I think that no unhallowed hand quote got used. And I love David A. Bednar. I have this like really weird dream about him, by the way. I need to tell you guys about this later.
All right. We'll do that offline.
Not for the audience.
We'll do that offline.
It was really interesting. So like
Sorry, really quick. I might need to dip out. My leg is dead.
Oh no, sorry, Jared.
I'm gonna have to amputate it. if I don't
So,
go. It was nice talking to you guys.
Someone
though.
call the barber.
yeah.
yeah, I think our dinner's not ready, so we'll probably end up going, but we're gonna jump on a live together later for those of you who want to like hear what he has to say. And we're just hanging out tonight. He's in town, like he's from Missouri, and so he came a long way, so I had to come and visit, and we're having dinner tonight. So
Right on.
anyways, we just wanted to drop in, give a few whatever food for thought.
Yeah, no, glad to have you join us. Have both of you join us. Like it was really a bit of a treat, even for however little time you guys could on this. But
So anybody who wants to hear what Jared has to say or what I have to say, we're gonna eat dinner right now, and then later after Monty's done, we'll jump on and we'll continue the conversation there. That's more specific to like the second coming.
Absolutely.
But definitely Book of Mormon parallels, and I agree. Chapter like those early third Nephi chapters feel a lot like what's happening right now. And I don't know that you have to do like a 1-for-1. Like
No.
to your point about Pahoran, I think that you can look at everything as patterns and shadows of like a previous type, right? Because we don't even have the same government that they had, not exactly. And so it's not going to be like a one-off. It's going to be more like, does it fit the pattern? And I think you have to look at the whole overall pattern of what happened in the Book of Mormon to really see that what we're experiencing right now fits that pattern, if that makes sense. So that's our final thoughts from this neck of the woods over here in Saratoga Springs, Utah.
Well, you go enjoy your dinner.
Right.
Go enjoy hanging out.
Hey, I made some really good like Spanish rice and some little like mini burros. We're gonna like it's gonna be good. So
Nice.
anyway, we'll see you guys later.
All right. Thanks for coming, Jessica.
All right. So I want to get back to this because I think this is very relevant to what we're talking about, and it fits in because I want to point this out. Because going back to Blaine and Brent Jorgensen's book, Spiritual Survival in the Last Days, in the first chapter where it talks about turmoil in the last days, it says, to his apostles prior to his crucifixion, Christ declared that before his second coming, nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. All these things are the beginning of sorrows. Matthew 24, 7-8. When I did my deal last week, or was it last week or the week before, commemorating the September 11th, and then the issue with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and going back to Ecclesiastes 3, we're in a season of sorrow right now. I think we are starting to come to the realization that our hearts are heavy. We're in a season of sorrow. We're in a time where, I agree. We're in those chapters of what's happening, and he talks about that. And it goes on. We wonder why such events are to occur. The answers that come from the prophets confirm that the Lord allows such calamities because of the wickedness of the people. Paul describes these people of the last days as lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truth breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. This is 2 Timothy 3, 2-4. Nephi adds, but behold, in the last days, or in the days of the Gentiles, yea, behold, all the nations of the Gentiles and Also the Jews, both those who shall come upon this land and those who shall be upon other lands, yea, even upon all the lands of the earth. Behold, they will be drunken with iniquity and all manner of abominations. And when that day shall come, they shall be visited of the Lord of hosts with thunder and with earthquake and with a great noise and with storm and with tempest and with the flame of devouring fire. This is 2 Nephi 27, 1 through 2. And then I posted in the for everybody that went on all of our live streams that were our channels that were streaming, not enemies but wickedness that brings wrath. And this is very interesting. Interestingly, it was neither the enemies of the Nephites nor the enemies of the Gentiles, nor will it be the enemies of the great and abominable church that bring destruction upon them or her. Rather, as Moroni explained, it is the wickedness and the abominations of the people themselves that prepare a way for their own destruction. This is in Ether 14:25. Once they have fully ripened in iniquity, then war is allowed to come upon them as a consequence of their own behavior. So everybody's talking about that there's this coming war. There's this coming civil war, but it's going to come by way of rich iniquity, gross depravity, gross wickedness that is going to be so pervasive that war is just going to break out because of the hardness of people's hearts and the stiff-neckedness of people's necks and the stubbornness of that.
Well, I think Michael made the point about that. You know, this attack today is kind of the proof of that. I don't think he knew about the article saying the church joined in and kind of sent that stuff to the Supreme Court. But when you're getting down, it's, you know, I think it kind of goes with what Monty and I were talking to somebody in a live last night. Is all that depravity comes from a lack of obedience to the law of chastity. There's no other law that gets so depraved. You know, so it's no convenient. Everyone keeps saying that, but what is the center focus of those claims? You know, and we're even seeing it across the world, like the U.S. and trying again not be political about it, but like the U.S. ranks kind of lower on the LGBT like freedom scale across the world, and all the other nations are kind of looking at us sideways. But look at how deprived they're going for allowing it the way they have. And now here, the few beacons that are still holding out on it are literally under attack.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to read something to you guys. I love Dwayne Crowther. Do you guys know who Dwayne Crowther is?
No.
No.
Okay, he's an LDS author.
No.
He's passed. He got his PhD writing about LDS prophecy in the 60s. That's how old he is. He wrote this book called Prophecy, A Key to the Future. I was dumb enough that after I gave the original copy I had away, I went and I bought the wrong copy of it because it got an updated edition by his son, and his son's a lunatic. However, he keeps his
Okay.
yeah. No, his son turns it into something hyper partisan politically, and it ruins the book.
Oof.
But it's
So can you say you got the ranting
yeah,
of
a
the
little
lunatic
bit.
there?
But he keeps his dad's writings in here. He just tries to expand on them in the wrong way. I'm going to read this. This is from a section called "The United States Warned of Conflict During Period of Preparatory Wars," prior to a Third World War. And this prior to the Third World War, that's kind of like a speculative thing that we where his son's adding things. But it reads, "There will be two great political parties." Oh, this is from Wednesday, June 19th, 1844, 8 days before Joseph's martyrdom. So this is Mosiah Hancock writing about what he heard Joseph Smith say. So this is a journal by Mosiah Hancock. We have to take a little bit of a grain of salt because it's a journal, but this is what he wrote. There will be two great political parties in this country. One will be called the Republican, which in 1844 had just started in Illinois. Remember, Abraham Lincoln's from there. They barely started that party in 1844. And the other, the Democrat Party, which exists since Jefferson. These two parties will go to war, and out of these two parties will spring another party, which will be the Independent American Party. So just to pause again, those who hear talk of like, well, or if you ever see it online, well, is this the start of an independent party or whatever have you? They're referring back to this, to Mosiah Hancock's journal. The United States will spend her strength and means warring in foreign lands till other nations will say, let's divide up the lands of the United States. Then the people of the U.S. will unite and swear by the blood of their forefathers that the land shall not be divided. Now, it's interesting that in 1844, whether or not Joseph said these exact words, that Mosiah's recording, he said words about spending her strength and means warring in foreign lands. Why would he have ever thought that? The Monroe Doctrine, I don't even think it. I think that was 1852. I could be wrong, but I'm not that great with history dates. Mosiah, you know that stuff. But and someone look up Monroe Doctrine, because I don't even think it had been penned yet.
1823. I was like you.
Wait.
I was thinking it was different. I think you're referring to Polk's doctrine of manifest destiny. But Monroe, was 23.
I probably, I think, okay. Either way. Still interesting. They're talking about the United States spending her strength and means warring in foreign lands. To continue, then the country will go to war and they will fight till one half the U.S. Army will give up and the rest will continue to struggle. They will keep on until they are very ragged and discouraged and almost ready to give up, when the boys rush forth in time to save the American army from defeat and ruin. And they'll say, "Brethren, we are glad to have you come. Give us men, henceforth we can talk with God. Then you will have friends, but you will save the country when its liberty hangs by a hair, as it were." So most people talk about, the Constitution hanging by the hair. And some of these things, and what Joseph seems to be saying is that there's going to be such foreign entanglement that ends up on our soil as a result of us choosing to go out to others, that the country will be saved by the church after this struggle, or as a result of this struggle. So it's kind of fascinating how that's structured. When, we also have a lot of people they refer to, well, after the Constitution's hanging by a thread, then the men of of Zion will rise up and save it or whatever, and it won't be in Washington, D.C. and all that. There are some other quotes that he has that, are some of the crazy stuff from that, implications of the son of Dwayne Crowther. But I always found that quote to be interesting. Some of the quotes they talk about, I think it was Orson Pratt speaks about a border wall at one point. Why would someone think about a border wall between Mexico when the Saints fled to Mexico?
Prophecy there.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff. I mean,
right.
Don't get this version of it. Don't get the updated. Updated bad. Don't do that. Get the red cover.
Don't
update it. That's the first time
lunatic.
I've heard anybody say updated version bad of any book.
It really is.
Yeah.
Get the red cover, the original. I think there are 2 editions of the original. I think there was like a revision, but that was done by Dwayne himself. Still good. So anyway, just something there. I don't want to get too weird and conspiratorial or whatever, but these are words of the prophet as recorded by people that knew him, witnessed him say them. However they recorded them, it's going to be somewhat faithful, right? They're not intending to be incorrect. It's relying on memory to whatever extent it takes for a scribe to do that. But
well, I think the reality is, I remember back in the 1990s, mid 90s, around 93, 94, 95, the mid 90s. There were stories circulating that I've been hearing within the evangelical Christian community about mysterious people getting into vehicles and saying the trumpet's about ready to blow, be prepared, or something like that, and then they would just disappear. End times prophecy. I have had personal revelation. I don't share them. I've written them down. I don't share them. They are so memorable. And all I can say is I'm seeing a lot of the fruition for that, because I think this is, the Lord gives us personal revelation, not just to understand the gospel, but I think he gives us revelation to help prepare us for what is coming ahead too. And those revelations, I don't speak on, I don't think anybody should speak on those types of revelations. It's just a warning for us that we can understand, and seeing everything being played out. Of course, everybody's running around the end of the world, the rapture's here, no one knows the day or time. But I think we are seeing, yes, we are seeing the signs of the times. We are probably in the beginning of sorrows. We're in the beginning of sorrows because of what is happening, what is going on. There is a huge revival going on. We're seeing it. We're noticing it. People are turning back to God. But I think that this would probably be the precipice where everybody's coming back, and it's getting that line of demarcation of you're either on the Lord's side or you're not.
Right.
You're either going to live for the gospel or you're not. And part of living for the gospel is you're going to endure persecution, you're going to endure hardship, you're going to endure the struggles that are come the way, and even to the point of, are you willing to die, to be unalive for your faith? Are you willing to make that ultimate sacrifice? And you know and everybody's on this conspiracy, oh, the beast, the antichrist. Honestly, I think for me, the antichrist is going to be AI. Is going to be some supercomputer AI that gives voice to the beast, and then there's going to be the false prophet and the political figure. That's my take on all this. Going to want to go conspiracy there, but the reality is what do we do now? What do we do today? How do we deal with these things? It's devastating to wake up, and last night I was up, I was doing some stuff, and then I was coming across where it was uh being pushed out that President Nelson had passed away, and great. And then I go to sleep, and then I wake up, and the first thing that I read on social media, X of all places, is the thing that's happening in Blaine, Michigan, and then just keeping track of it. And so these are happening at, they're not isolated incidents anymore. They're not like just lone things that are happening. They're happening everywhere. And with what's going on with Portland, and the political rhetoric that we're seeing throughout, there is a line being drawn in the sand as we speak, politically, spiritually, and nationally.
Yeah, and just like some of the other stuff, signs of the times. So I'm in Arizona, about an hour and a half directly east of where I live are a couple of towns called Miami and Globe that are kind of like, they're very small, they're old mining towns, and they've kind of been slowly dying over time. But they got hit really hard with this monsoon. It's the last monsoon of the season that we expected. And someone said, I don't know if this is accurate, someone said 3 inches in 30 minutes.
Sheesh.
Yeah. Now monsoons can do that. Just so you guys are aware, that's not like all that uncommon.
Mhm.
But what it does is it causes flash flooding, which we're always getting a lot of flash flood alerts out here. And the towns are their downtowns and everything are just wrecked. It's over. So we're actually, the church reached out, all the local leaders. So this came from Salt Lake down through the proper orgs. We're going to head out. They wanted 8 to 10 brothers from every ward to head out there tomorrow and spend the day working however they're asked to. Right now, we're being told that there's still 15 people missing. And so emergency teams are trying to find them. They're scrambling every resource they can. And if they still haven't found them, that'll be a primary focus tomorrow, is a search and rescue for some individuals. So we got to see how that ends up turning out. But just that, like, again, we have all these monsoons and never have we had something happen like this to a couple of towns this bad in my lifetime. It may have happened before for sure. I'm not saying it doesn't or can't. Phoenix and Scottsdale were getting flooded like crazy yesterday and a little bit Friday. No one got swept away. It's much safer. Larger cities, better infrastructure. So when you start thinking about it, and then some of these things start hitting home, it becomes really heavy. I guess you start thinking, now this could be like one of those things. Oh, it comes in threes, or whatever, however you want to parlay that out. But as far as I'm concerned, like, we're seeing a ramp up in weather events that are affecting people, towns, cities. We're seeing, Jared's probably going to talk a lot about all that stuff. It's usually this kind of shtick. I don't want to steal it, but like, we really need to be cognizant and aware and becoming more faithful. The talks that were given today at Sacrament Meeting for us really reminded me of, neither of them said it, but it reminded me of President Nelson's call that in the coming days ahead, we will not be able to spiritually survive without the influence of the Holy Ghost. I know I messed up that quote, but um, just knowing that we have a reason to have hope and to retain our faith and to grow our faith. We have a reason to expand our charity towards others in these kind of times, and give more of ourselves and be more Christ-like in that sense, and
Right.
be his emissary through these events. And that's what the Lord is counting on us to do. He's counting on us to turn more to him and to be more like him than ever before. And so we need to expand ourselves, brothers. That's my message. We need to expand ourselves, and really, take the fight back against the wickedness, the darkness, and the evil in high places and wherever else that Scripture talks about. That game of chess where there's all these checkmates being made by the powers. We know who wins the game in the end. We don't know the final score. We don't know how it plays out. We know who wins the game. Play for a winning team. Do the things that the winning team asks you to do. If you're asked to be the offensive guard, be the offensive guard. If you're asked to be the wide receiver, be the wide receiver.
Right.
Play the team game, win the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's coming down to where you cannot sit on the bench anymore. You're going to participate one way or another, whether you like it or not. You're going to participate. you can't sit and warm the bench anymore.
Well,
yeah,
I think
this is that one segment was this is from Elder Bednar. Then I'll toss it. I'm sorry. I have it written down. Idleness, laziness, slothfulness, fear, apathy, and procrastination are the opposites of true faith in the Savior.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the important thing to realize is that, like, again, despite how things are happening, like how things are shaping up here, again, we have the blueprint, right? But the that's the entire thing. And Frizzy, we did talk about President Nelson, and I think we can talk a little bit more about it here. But this unfortunately has kind of overshadowed it. The loss of the prophet can't be overstated enough. Like, really,
right?
But this is something that we kind of we're kind of opened this up with, is that we recognize that the times, they are a changing. This is the reason for the thumbnail. And and it's been said not just here but also on Word Radio and several other places as well about the kind of men that were leading the church for the last 30 years. From 1995 to 2018, we had executives in business and in marketing that were able to expand the reach of the church in those aspects. From 2018 to now, we had a medical professional, a heart surgeon. Now, with the current president of the 12, it is a constitutional lawyer, a judge. What does that mean? What kind of things are we going to be facing? And Michael, you brought up at the very beginning the the amicus briefs that the church has filed. I mean, heck, when I remember when I was working in church broadcasting, and this would have been roughly about 3 months before President Monson died, and we had an all hands meeting in October of 2017, and they said that we're going to need to reduce and simplify. And this was because something big was coming, but we don't know what, and we need to be willing to know and shore up the resources that we have. And there was a very powerful spirit that came into that room. Very powerful, that said, yes, this is true. And I had that immediate impression, like, yes, this is actually going to happen. I don't know what my position and what my place is in, with church employment is going to look as far as this concerned. I ended up leaving probably about 6 months after. But it's something to be noticed here, is that they had to roll things back so that they could shore up the reserves they needed for the pandemic 2.5 years later. That was a prophecy. They said they didn't know what was coming, but something is coming. We're told we need to prepare, and that's what we're going to do. And what happened? We have the pandemic, and now that we're several years out of that now, what is going to come down the pike? We've already had instances in just the last 3 years alone of people going after the church legally, with the SEC investigation, with the Nielsen brothers trying to get the money from the IRS for getting all of that, and even then they were smacked down. It's like there's nothing here, right?
Mhm.
But I don't think it's going to be an accident that for the foreseeable future, at least, we are going to have a constitutional lawyer turned judge as
Supreme Court judge for the state of Utah too.
Yeah.
He wasn't just lower court. He was the highest for a
Right.
state.
right.
Mhm.
And so and so in this particular instance, we have to recognize, okay, there's something coming. Again, it's those types and shadows and those patterns that Jessica and Jared were talking about earlier when they were on, talking about what is going to come. And we have to be ready, and we have to have our eyes open to it. This is one of the main reasons why I made the video that I did this week. Correlating the events that we see in the Book of Mormon to what we're seeing now. We have to be able to recognize that. And we have to be able to say, okay, this is what is happening. We need to be prepared. We need to be prepared.
Well, and that's what I was saying before Michael's quote. Like you said, we're in like 3rd Nephi 3 to 6 somewhere,
Mhm.
right? If you take, again, it always comes back to, and thanks Michael for bringing it up, but like history is my nit. We're in what I call the 4th of the 5 great battles or wars that shaped Christianity. We're in what the 30 Years' War is, the Protestants versus the Catholics. The start, the beginning of the end, because the 5th one I have is the American Revolution, but the beginning of the work can move forward, because prior to that, Catholicism had such a death grip. We're right here. We're seeing, I don't want to say Catholics, but we're seeing general Christianity's losing its death grip on what the gospel is. We're seeing the Gadianton robbers losing their death grips on the people through their secret combinations in the government. But we are, with that loss of that death grip, we are seeing the offensive being pushed.
Yes.
But, I would say, and I was actually thinking about after watching the unfortunate reality is the Charlie Kirk assassination was the Protestants pushing the Catholic out the window for us. As bad as that is to say, but that was kind of the big predecessor to the third. They pushed, they put out the window, and how dare you do that, the Empire. And we're seeing that now. Like Charlie is like, they got pushed. We're in the final one will be the Battle of Armageddon, correlating with the American Revolution, unfortunately. I know, again, it's poetic. I know it's not one-to-one, but when Armageddon happens, that is the predecessing battle that will lead to the coming of Christ. Just as the revolution is what the predecessor was to the coming of the restoration of the gospel. So,
and it's important to know, from what I was reading, those things, the preparatory wars, are to happen before Armageddon.
Yeah.
So what all that's talking about that relates to this country, again, if Mosiah Hancock's record is true, and some corresponding things that are written by others are true, then Armageddon's after all those things, and when it talks about Israel standing alone, it means Israel standing alone, because we're not going to be able to do anything to help them.
Well, and I was talking. So I love the Book of Revelation. Like, outside of Acts, I think that's the most I read in the Bible, because Acts is showing the works of the early, and Revelation is literally. And remember one of my institute instructors said, he's like, when it says Israel, it's not just that we can't help them, it's that the world is it's a double-sided. Okay, Edward, say hi real quick, since that's what you're. Hello. But it was a double-sided. It's one, the nation of Israel will be alone. But second, the world will have turned his back on God and his covenant. So it's not just. Okay, Edward, please stop. Go watch K-pop Demon Hunters.
Oh gosh.
But what was that? He was like, you'll see. He's like, we're seeing it now. In fact, the UN inquiry just came out that did declare the actions of Israel to be within the frame of genocide, and almost as soon as that came out, 3 or 4 other nations said, "All right, we're back in we're recognizing Palestine." As
Yeah.
It's like nations are starting to back off of Israel, literally. But again, it circles back. We're also seeing the world turn away from God just as much.
Mhm.
Yep.
Well, and I think, and this is just the first chapter of that book, because towards the end of it says fullness versus incompleteness. And again, this is referencing Blaine Bretton Jorgensen's book published back in 1990, Spiritual Survival in Last Days. At the close of the first chapter, it says, if there is a fullness of God's wrath and indignation, then there must also be an incompleteness of it, or in other words, lesser levels of perfectly controlled judgments by God, wrath and indignation.
Uh-oh.
I hope we didn't lose him again.
Wrath and are at a fullness.
go.
There is for us as individuals and as a society. Destruction has not been assured. For example, Amulek says to the people of Ammon-Nihah, ye are laying plans to pervert the ways of the righteous and to bring down the wrath of God upon your heads, even to the utter destruction of this people. Alma 10:18. The people of Ammon-Nihah hadn't done it yet, but they were indeed laying plans to commit enough wickedness to ensure their destruction individually and as a people. However, Amulek was still holding out to them the opportunity to repent. Alma the Younger says in verification of this, and now, my brethren, seeing we know these things, and they are true, let us repent and harden not our hearts, that we provoke not the Lord our God to pull down his wrath upon us. But let us enter into the rest of God, which is prepared according to his word. Alma 12:37. And so I think what is coming down the pipeline here, I think, there's going to be more and more. You've got to be prepared. I think there's going to be a call back to preparedness, but not the type of preparedness that my generation grew up with, the 2-year supply of food and all that. But there's this spiritual preparedness of you need to be ready to stand. And if you're not ready to stand, you're going to get caught up. You're going to get swept away. You're going to fall. And we're going to see more and more of the shifting of the wheats and the tares, the sifting process, because we've been in that process of sifting, I believe, but now we're entering the seasons of sorrow where more sifting is going to come about, because it's through those sorrows that people are either going to rise up and continue to honor the fidelity of their covenants, and people are going to come into faith because they're looking for answers, they're hungering for it, and nothing. You study the persecution. What people thought was going to destroy the early Christian movement, the people of the way, actually brought more people into the faith than it actually dissuaded them from the faith. So the more persecution is heaped out, the more people are going to investigate and look to it, and then they're going to be converted because they're going to experience God for who he is. But it's going to be a divine light. We're going to come to a time where Christ said at the close of Matthew 19 that if anybody does not forsake family, lands, possessions, things, and follow me, is not worthy of me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about that. We're entering a time where literally, if you're not going to live a life of sacrifice and follow Christ, you're not going to be worthy of his love and devotion and forgiveness, mercy, and grace, because there's no room for it anymore.
Right.
You're either living unto yourself, and you're going to go by the way of the great and spacious building, or you're going to come in and you're going to stand and become a pillar of fire in his Father's temple. And that's where I think we're going to be heading to personally. I have a feeling, I want to be wrong on this, but I have a feeling that Donald H. Oaks, he's 93. He's going to be a short-term president of the church.
It's possible.
Because
we didn't have one last to 101.
He might, but
Hey, but I think Tim is right there on him being short term.
There was some people in church today that were thinking like, you know what, he may be as short as Howard W. Hunter. I don't think so. I think if he is going to be a short-term president, it'll probably be closer to Joseph Fielding Smith.
Speaking of Joseph Fielding, I was actually looking up a quote because Tim has said it, and it reminded Joseph Fielding mentioned something Wilford Woodruff taught, and it was about the four. We're seeing it. the 4 destroying angels. He said these are now at work on the earth on their sacred mission. That goes back to Wilford Woodruff said it. Those angels have left the portals of heaven, and they now stand over this people in this nation now, and are hovering over the earth, waiting to pour out the judgments. From this very day, they shall be poured out. And then a month later, he said, these angels that have been held for many years have now gotten their liberty to go out and commence their mission and their work on earth. And they are here today on the earth. I feel bold to say to the Latter-day Saints, there's meaning in these judgments.
Yes.
He's talking about coming to God and that, and it just made me think of that because it's like, why, they're going to turn to God, absolutely, but at the same time, there's a meaning to all the bad things happening too, and it's the justice of God coming forth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that leads me to another thing, because in society today, we really have kind of, in a way, it's not technical, but we've kind of blasphemed what justice means.
Yeah.
We talk about justice in terms of like social justice and these other forms of justice, racial justice, whatever. And these forms of justice, the word is being transfigured into meaning something about how there needs to be retribution for oppression in the past, and that people need to be subjugated in accordance to the penalty that must be inflicted upon them for those past actions, right? And we have who do you guys know who Taylor Petrie is? He's actually LDS. You're not going to think it after I say this, but he's actually LDS. He's some type of a scholar. He's written a book about queer LDS theology. That's not the name of it, but it's something about that. You guys can look him up.
Is he connected to Blair Osler?
It's a lot like Blair Osler. His is Queer Mormon Kinship. The name of his is Queer Mormon Kinship.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so his point is that like heaven is one big non-binary sexual fest.
Oh gosh.
So anyway, and he's one of these guys. So he's a queer theorist, very far left, Marxist possibly even, and he had this to say, which was ironic that he said this very recently. Research has indicated that at least part of the reason for the decline in Christianity among younger generations is the perception that it has become an organ of conservative politics rather than a movement to bring about God's justice. And when someone like him talks about justice, if you read everything else he has to say, you know what he means. And it has nothing to do, he's not trying to push for God's justice, because he literally wrote a book that is against the doctrine of the family, entirely against the doctrine of the family. And it's this, let's reimagine and let's queer Mormon theology, and let's queer the kinship that we have to God and how that should look and work. And again, queer doesn't necessarily connotate sexuality. Queer just means to transgress the norm.
But that's the context of what they're putting in, though.
Yes, that's how it's used. Yeah. But technically, when Michel Foucault talked about queering society, he meant to upend the norm, to subvert the norm, to recreate the norm. And then sexuality is the easiest way to do that, because who doesn't find pleasure in it?
Oh gosh.
It's an easy vector to attack.
My dinner, I think, is about done. Thanks for letting me be for the short bit I was.
Yeah.
The bare minimum I was able to contribute. I hopefully will see. Well, I will see y'all later for.
We'll see what happens. Oh gosh. Well,
happens.
and I think probably that would be a good enough spot to end it here, because there's going to be a press conference here momentarily, going a little bit more over what happened in Michigan, a little bit more, possibly a motive. We don't know. But we'll go ahead and end it here. We will be coming back to you in about 3-ish hours for Come Follow Me tonight. And we'll have some fun there. Any case, everyone, please come back and join us tonight at 9 p.m. Mountain Time for Come Follow Me. We're going to be going over sections. Oh, excuse me. 106 through 108. 106 to 108. Thank you.
And Jessica and I already went over that.
Yeah, you kind of did on Thursday, but we'll have some more fun here. There's probably some more insights that other folks can chime in on, and we'll have some fun. So
We may
Andy,
have a new guest joining our panel tonight too.
yes,
Yeah.
that'd be
Oh,
fun.
You might.
this will be fun. Are they friends
on.
or are they food?
They're friends.
What?
Booze?
random Finding Nemo reference. Oh gosh.
Well,
Oh,
I
gosh.
wanted to say, are they a fighter or are they food? But you know,
Hmm.
this isn't Ragnarok.
No, not quite. Anyway, we'll see you all in about 3 hours here for Come Follow Me. Thanks for joining us.